Welcome to the Charlie Crime Buster, and this is our true crime talk show. My name's James Bugland, and I'm your co-host and executive producer. And the website that hosts all of our Crime Buster podcasts is charliecrimebuster.com. That's charliecrimebuster.com. And I'm humbled to be the producer of this show, and I'm in no way perfect. So the reason I say this and even share it is that if you happen to see anything that is either misspelled or inaccurate, I would certainly appreciate your feedback. This is a safe space, and we take your comments, your suggestions, and your advice very seriously. But if you see anything, and I mean anything, please email me at james@charliecrimebuster.com. That's james@charliecrimebuster.com. But if you have any questions, concerns, tips, or suggestions regarding the show and its contents, you can email Charlie Crimebuster, and he has two emails. They both end up in the same place, but the one is charlie@charliecrimebuster.com. That's charlie@charliecrimebuster.com, or charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's the one we've been using quite frequently, but it's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Now, if you're wondering how we do what we do, well, both of us, Charlie and I, voluntarily invest our time and our finances to bring these stories and updates to you each and every week. But if you would like to help us with our mission of supporting our first responders, men and women of law enforcement, and military personnel, please visit our Peacemaker Network website. That's peacemakernetwork.com. That's peacemakernetwork.com. And there you can become a badge, that's BADGE supporter, for only $3 per month. That's less than a penny a day. And if you are already a supporter, we want to sincerely send our appreciation and gratitude to you on behalf of our peacemakers. They're the ones that run into danger and not away from danger. Their mission is to keep us safe, secure, and free. But with the rising price of gas these days, let's just say that you don't have that kind of cash, but you still want to help us. Well, here's another way. You can become a subscriber of our YouTube channel, and the only cost there is a simple click of the subscribe button. And again, we say thank you. And if you are a listener of this podcast and not on our new YouTube channel yet, that when you get a moment from your computer, simply launch your browser, go to youtube.com, and then search for Charlie Crimebuster. That's all one word, Charlie Crimebuster. And when there, just simply click the subscribe button. You see, by subscribing to our show brings visibility to our mission of helping our peacemaker community. And if you are already a subscriber, we want to also thank you on behalf of them. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating in this presentation and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in this presentation should be considered innocent unless found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Well, Charlie, now that we've got all the formalities out of the way, what do we have on the show today?
Well, to begin with, James, I'm a little disappointed, man. I thought for a good while there that you and I were perfect, and you just mentioned that we're not perfect, and I'm probably going to have to go to counseling and get some assistance. I love that about our show. I like to be authentic.
Yes, authenticity is great.
And
yes,
to be authentic, there's going to be some times when we misspeak. Sometimes we might get a word out of out of order a time or two, or say the wrong word or pronounce it the wrong way.
It's happened.
It just shows that we're human, and we're just doing the best we can to get people real material as we get out there. But today, of course, we're going to talk about our last episode, and the last episode was the Grave Diggers Murder Graveyard, and all about the Chad Daybell trial.
Well, let me ask you about that. Where did you come with that name, by the way, just out of curiosity?
Well, as you do know, we've done a lot of work on this case, even 4 years ago when this first came to the knowledge of America and the world.
Right.
We were right there on the front line of it, and we did a series that we kind of centered it around the gravedigger. and the gravedigger, the gravedigger smoking shovel,
Yeah,
the gravedigger digs his own grave, that sort of thing. And of
right.
course, the reason is because Chad Daybell, who's on trial right now for murder,
Hmm.
he did two things. He wrote books, and he was a sexton. He actually, dug graves, and so it became became a very catchy phrase, and I think it gets a lot of people's attention. And I think it's very ironic. It's very ironic that now we know that murdered people were found in Chad Daybell's backyard, and it was near a pet cemetery, which literally means that he turned his backyard into a killing field. And so that's where we get that as we go along.
This does beg the question. I'm going to ask it probably because somebody is probably out there like a dad like me that asks dad type jokes. But being a sexton, wouldn't he have been able to dig a better grave having the experience? Just saying.
You would think he did. Of course, we're not all assured that he did all the grave digging. We know that he
Exactly.
had an accomplice on there, but when you get back and talking about that, the grave, when you particularly hear how they mentioned that they found little JJ, there was actually
Yeah.
several layers there. There was even bricks, and then there was a wood slop on top of it. And we know that they were really going to try their best to conceal it, because he was even talking about putting a mobile home or a prefab home on the property. So we know they were out to do the very
Wow.
best that they could, to conceal that.
That's, just the way that those children were treated is very sobering,
Yes, it is. No doubt about that.
extremely sobering.
Yep.
You spent a lot of time at the very beginning, talking about the Tammy Daybell and her health. Why was that such a topic?
Well, that's a good question, because as you know, I think I've kind of centered in on that because I was noticing that the prosecution was centering in on that fact.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
we knew that prior his defense attorney was going to go from the angle that when Tammy first died, the coroners, who are very unexperienced or inexperienced, I should say,
Hmm.
they immediately took Chad's word for the fact that she was sick, that she was ill, and that she died of natural causes. They even on the death certificate, they had even placed that down, that she had died of natural causes. It
Hmm.
was only after they exhumed her body, and then a real medical examiner took a look at it, that they could find that there was enough evidence there that they declared it a homicide. But prior to that, he said that she was sick and that she was ill. So the prosecution now has, and I think it's just been amazing how they have brought person after person after person after person to the stand
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
all report on her good health.
Right.
She was getting ready
Right.
to run a marathon, for goodness sakes.
She was.
She had a clogging class. She was in an intense exercise group, and in fact, she had told somebody that she felt that she was in the best shape she ever had been in her life.
Right.
So I wanted to spend that time because, as you know, we're reporting on the trial, and that's exactly what the prosecution has been doing, is showing to the jury that this idea that she was sick and died of a natural cause just doesn't float when it comes to looking at the reality and the real evidence.
Right. Right. Well, while talking about Tammy, you asked the audience to hold on to the thought of smothering. And why was that?
Well, I think it's very interesting when they did finally do the autopsy on Tammy, and as the medical examiner examined her body, he declared that she died of asphyxiation. In other words, she was smothered, and even to the point that said that there were bruises where someone may have held her down and someone smothered her.
Hmm.
Well, the thing that I thought about the moment I heard that, I immediately began to think about how they found the body of little JJ in the graveyards or in the gravediggers cemetery. When they found little JJ, he was actually had a plastic bag over his head, and get this, James, he had tape all over his mouth and his nose.
Oh, no.
And so there is that smothering. You see, oftentimes people who commit murder will develop an MO, a method of operation. And it doesn't have to be a rocket scientist to see here's Tammy, who died of smothering, and here's little JJ, who had duct tape over his nose, over his mouth, and then a plastic bag wrapped around his head. So, you can pretty well see that fits together. The smothering part of that fits together. By the way, that reminds me, I know that you certainly know about it, and we do here in Central Florida, of little Kaylee
Hmm.
and Casey
Hmm.
Anthony, who
Right.
the same thing seemed to happen in that situation.
Well, do you think that JJ was smothered?
Well, here's where I come down. When you look at these four victims, we have Charles Valla. We know for a fact that he was shot with a weapon. He was killed
Right.
with a gun.
Right.
We know Tammy Daybell. Now, and Charles Valla was of course the spouse of Lori, and Tammy is the spouse of Chad. And we know that we know how both of those died. It's a little more difficult to determine how the children were killed, but the autopsy on little JJ does say it was asphyxiation. That's what the medical examiner came to the conclusion to. So I think it was smothered, and I think that probably gave their spiritual hitman Alex Cox an idea on how they were going to kill Tammy, because remember, little JJ was killed before Tammy.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think, he tried to shoot two people. He shot Charles. He tried to shoot Brandon Bordeaux, but missed. He
Right.
tried to shoot Tammy Daybell, but his gun jammed. So I guess he decided he'd go. He wasn't a very good shot apparently, unless he was 6 foot in front of somebody.
Right.
And so then he says, okay, we smothering worked with JJ, so why don't we use that with Tammy? So there is an MO, and that's why I said hang on to that word smothering. Now, the one that I'm a little confused about at this point, and maybe the audience could give us some of their thoughts on this, is how did Tylee die? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to know, because her body's not there, not put together. They actually brought her to the autopsy table in buckets.
Right.
She had
Right.
been dismembered, she had been burned, and so there's really no way that we can know. Only one person we know it, and that's the person who did the murder, which we believe was definitely Alex, but maybe Chad too.
Well,
So
what concerns me, and I'm just bringing this up as topic of conversation, but
sure.
that JJ might have been buried alive. The fact that there were two bags over his face and duct tape, that he might have been buried alive. And
Well,
then the reason that Tylee was killed in the fashion that she was to get rid of any evidence of sexual assault,
yeah,
because that crossed my mind.
yeah, that we can certainly go to all those places, because we really don't know. My here's my gut feeling, my theory, but I don't have any evidence to prove this. But my gut feeling is that Tyler is bigger than little JJ,
Mhm.
and I
Right.
believe she put up a fight.
I believe so.
And I believe that it got violent, and I believe that probably her body was, probably wounded. There's probably blood. There was probably all kinds of signs of a
Hmm.
violent struggle. And
Hmm.
I think that he said, "Okay, man, I can't let people see that. So I'm going to make sure I get rid of all the evidence there." Whereas little JJ, his body was intact to a certain extent on that. But boy, I sure hope that he didn't smother him. I hope that maybe I would hope that when we get back to Casey Anthony, they use chloroform. I would hope that they'd use something like that and put him to sleep, or something of that sort. But it's just sad, isn't it, when you think about
It
how
is
these
sad.
children died, whichever way they did. We
It is sad.
we 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 may not know exactly how they died, but I think the prosecution is doing an extremely good job in proving who did it.
They are. They're painting the picture very well by
Yep,
establishing facts, both from
yep.
the exhumation of Tammy as well as the exhumation of the children. So I think they're doing a great job. But
Oh,
are
no
you
doubt about it.
are you still of the opinion that Tammy was died from asphyxiation of being smothered?
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. I believe. I again, we know. there's no doubt in my mind, you know, and I don't think it's going to be any doubt in the jurors that she was murdered.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if she was murdered, how was she murdered? How did she die? Well, there wasn't, wasn't any visible marks of real trauma other than the bruises.
Right.
So she wasn't hit in the head. It wasn't, a blunt object didn't do it. There wasn't any bullet wounds. There wasn't any stabbing wounds. So the very next step, of course, according to the medical examiner, in dealing with what had happened and looking inside her and checking out all these things, even about the spittle that came up, all of that really points to asphyxiation, which is usually a smothering.
Also, the bruising was
Yeah,
brought
yeah,
up as well. Yeah.
yeah. And now there's a really important thing there that I think that people need to realize, and this is a thing that's just really stunned me. Not that I'm shocked, but at least caught my attention. Is that, keep in mind, if what the medical examiner says is true, if she was held down and then smothered while she was held down, then that means that there was probably two people there doing that. Now, we
Right.
do know that she died during the night, or during the night into the morning, and we know for one fact that there was only one other person there with her, and that was Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Now I believe Alex was there too, because he was in the area, and the trial. If people have been following it, one of the witnesses said that when Lori had gone to Hawaii, because she was in Hawaii when Tammy died, which would be a really good alibi for her.
Mm-hmm.
But when she was there, Alex was supposed to go out there with him as well, and Melanie actually testified that Alex was not able to come. He was supposed to go on the trip, but he was not able to come. Now, get this, James, because Lori told her that Chad had something for Alex to do. And
Oh,
that was right
wow.
during the same time, that she was killed.
Wow.
So that's really, I think, big. If the jurors caught
That
it,
is huge. Yeah.
they can say it. And then the other thing that I thought was so telling in the testimony was that they were talking about after he had attempted to shoot Tammy, and he in a gun jam.
Hmm.
Another person testified that Lori just went off. I mean, she really went off after she talked to Alex over the phone. She was extremely mad, and somebody could overhear her saying, "That idiot can't do anything right." So those are some very telling things, except that really ties Lori to it. But I believe too that Chad is in this too. So get this: number one, we know Chad was there with Tammy, and number two, we know that Chad fabricated an alibi for there to be the dirt disturbed and the fire where they burned Tylee's bones. So
Hmm.
we know that he did that.
Right.
So in my opinion, that puts him very close right there on that. Now the question I have, and what do you think, James? Do you think that when Alex was there burying those children, do you think Chad went down there with him and helped him bury those children? Or do you think he just stayed up there in the house and pretended nothing was happening?
I think the latter. I think he stayed up there at the house and pretended he didn't want to be involved in that process. I don't think.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel too. I think he's one who did not like to get his hands dirty, and he's probably one who wanted his spiritual hitman to do all the wet work, all the bad stuff.
What was telling was when the detective was sharing the tracks, the GPS tracking mechanism that they were using to track the phones, is that they had Charles Vallow's phone with Lori as she went to the store to get flip flops. She actually went to two stores to get flip flops,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
also
Yeah.
went and then also went through a drive through.
Yeah.
So my question is, I know you've been talking about this, but I just need to get your opinion here. But you spoke of Charles Vallow and his death, even though Chad's not implicated in this,
Right.
nor charged with his murder. But but you spoke of it. So why is it that there's a connection there?
Well, I think you got to go back to what the prosecution is doing to this jury. any good lawyer knows that whether it's defense or whether it's the prosecution, what you're doing to the jury, you are telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling a story. And in this story, at the very opening of the case, in his opening statement, he mentioned the fact that Lori and Chad had built an alternate reality
Mm.
where they both could get, sex, power, and money. I mean, that is the theme. And in this plot, there is a plot, and I think you have to see the whole thing to see how sinister it is. You have to see that Lori's husband, who she was married to during this affair, was killed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Chad's wife, who he was married to in this affair, was killed.
Mm-hmm.
The two children were killed, and both of these people were involved in all of the things that happened up to, prior to that, and during that time, and after that time. So I think you have to, if you're going to prove a conspiracy, and that's what they're proving, it is important. Even though they're saying, well, we don't think we have enough evidence right now to really put Chad in that murder of Charles Vallow. There's certainly enough stuff that puts him around it. He even called the funeral home and pretended that he was Charles Vallow's cousin to try to speed up them getting him cremated. So
Do you think he did that independently, or do you think that it was Lori that contrived that stories for him to make the call?
I think it could have been a little bit of both. It could have been Lori saying, "Hey, we really need to speed this thing along," and Chad says, "Well, I've got all kinds of experience with funeral homes. Let me go ahead and handle this. I'll
Because
make the call and I'll get moving in that area."
I think what the audience is struggling with, because I've seen some comments and
Sure.
some chats and things during the trial and everything, is that the true conspirator among most of the observers of the show, of the live streaming, is that they believe that Lori was the true conspirator because she's the one that lost the most. She got rid of her husband and her children.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I can understand people saying that. Yeah.
I don't see Chad being when I say I'm from what I've read, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see that I can see their view that she was the chief conspirator because she was the one that was basically driving most of everything. She had the
Well,
most to lose. She had her brother
yeah.
helping her. This was all basically her driving it, and that's the reason why they took the death penalty off of the table for her, because that was her way of contriving to get out of it and put it all on him.
Well,
That's what I've read.
I certainly know that, and I respect that. I respect that view of it. But here's my take on it. My take is, when it comes to Lori and Chad, let's just ask the question: who was the real driving force?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's very easy to figure this one out. It took both of them to manipulate, and they both were manipulating in this relationship. For instance, Lori, through her sex and her beauty, could manipulate Chad. Chad, on the other hand, could also manipulate Lori. Because remember this. Remember when they were having that little argument between themselves, and he came back on, and there the text had been read in the court. He came back on and says, "Well," he said, "I'm sorry. I don't. I'm going to have to take my protection away from you. But now, if you at least just call me, then I will put my protection back on you." So
Mm.
he was using his religious knowledge and religious power to manipulate her. So
Wow.
what you have here, you have the very perfect storm of codependency. I mean, perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was dependent upon her because she was making him feel young and vital again and attractive again,
Right.
because she was a very beautiful woman. She was Miss Texas at one time,
Mm-hmm.
and she was manipulating him with her sex appeal and all of that, and thinking that he's the most wonderful person in the world. The way she admired him, she was using that to manipulate him. But he, at the same time, was using his knowledge and his power as a, quote, in her mind, a religious leader, to manipulate her as well. So I think what you have here, the reason why it's like a tornado. A tornado can feed upon itself,
Right.
and they were feeding upon each other, and in that force of evil, unfortunately, there are bodies lying in the path.
that's certainly evident in the way that the trial is playing out. But do you really think that the jury's going to go for the death penalty?
Well, I think it depends on one thing. First of all, keep in mind we have not yet had Pryor put on his defense yet.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he is an excellent attorney. I've got to say this. I really respect him because he's got a real uphill battle with
He
all this
does.
evidence that's coming down. But he's probably one of the best guys I've ever seen at cross examination, and he's done an extremely job on that. And I have yet to see what he's going to do when he puts on his defense. But right now, I think it's going to boil down to two things. If that jury believes that Chad Daybell was there that night and participated in his wife's death, and that Chad Daybell knew without a shadow of a doubt that they had manipulated Alex Cox to do that killing, and he knew that those kids were being buried on his property, yes, sir, I believe they'll vote for the death penalty. I know I would.
What do you think about the prosecution? How do you think they're doing on this?
The prosecution I think is doing an extremely good job. I love the way that they're very methodic in the way that they're bringing their case. There's a method you can see that is planned out, and I tell you what is really super cool about it. I think, it's sad to say you're talking about the murder trial being
I know,
cool,
right?
but what is really interesting to me is how they are keeping the jury interested. I mean, I like it. They don't just put all the scientific stuff on there and bore you for 3 hours of scientific. They'll put some scientific stuff on, then they'll bring a witness in.
Right.
And then they'll put somebody else in, and they'll go another way. Then they'll change it and put another. They keep it moving, and they keep changing different approaches on it. And I thought at first, it's a little scattered, but I said, man, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I'm listening to this trial as a lot of people that are our audience are listening to it, and I can tell you, it is interesting.
It is interesting.
I'm not getting bored, and I don't believe the people are either.
How do you think the judge is doing? Judge Boyce.
I think he's doing an excellent job.
Yeah, he's keeping it fair. He's keeping it even.
Yeah, he's a very fair judge.
Yeah, I like it. How do you think Pryor is going to approach it? Do you think he's going to recall some witnesses? Because I noticed they let quite a few of them out of their subpoenas. So
yeah, but he didn't let Melanie give out of her subpoena.
I saw that.
And there's several others. So I don't know. I think he's going to take a look and see how he thinks he's going up to this point, and then he'll probably make some choices at that point. I think he's going to come back and try to hit very, very hard that number one, that I think he's going to try to prove that Tammy died of natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to try to prove that she died of natural causes. And the second thing is going to try to say that this was what, we talked about a while ago, that it was just Lori and her brother doing all this, and that Chad was just duped.
Mm-hmm. That seems to be the general consensus of what I see in the chat stream during the live streaming, is that the general consensus is he's going to come back and try to paint a totally different picture of the fact that she was the conspirator, and he was also leveraging his abilities as well. And like you mentioned, being codependent on each other, but he was leveraging, because I think she was the influencer. When I say, I think from what I've read, they're saying that she is the chief influencer in the relationship.
I do think that that she manipulated him with sex and admiring him and that sort of thing. But you got to go back to looking at all this again, and why I believe that's why we're hearing this over and over again. And here's another brilliant thing the prosecution did: they bring people on the stands who knows about the teaching of Chad. This is Chad's teaching. And they said, okay, a person goes dark. What happens? In order for them to be free, the body has to die. Okay, so they'll come back and said, was Charles Vallow considered by Chad to be dark? Yes. Did Charles Vallow die? Yes. Did Tammy Daybell, was she considered to be dark? Yes. Did Tammy die? Yes. Did Tylee, was she considered dark? Yes. Did she die? Yes. Did little JJ, was he considered dark? Yes, he died. You see how they did that? I mean, they tied together the fact that it was Chad who said that these spirits were dark. It was Chad who taught them that in order for the spirit to go free, that body has to die. That wasn't Lori. That was Chad that did that teaching. And so he may not have been out there and done the killing, but he started the motion. And by him starting that motion, that justified in their own twisted, stupid ways that they could go out and kill. So I mean, I understand what people are saying, but I believe that this guy who seems to be quiet, I believe he has literally taken on the description that Christ talked about in the Bible, sheep in wolf's clothing. He appears to be that kind, gentle man, but a kind, gentle person would not teach the kind of stuff that would allow people to do these evil things that these folks did. They better be glad I'm not on the jury.
Yeah. It makes two of us. I mean, this is what, how many days now we've been into this thing?
Oh, 50, 18, 19, 20, over 20 days, right?
Yeah, over 20 days. Yeah.
20 something days. And we're not done yet.
We're not done. I mean, the defense even hasn't put on their show yet. So we'll have,
nope.
There's
And
more
then,
to come.
But here's the crazy thing about a jury now. Keep this in mind. You got to have a unanimous vote.
Yeah, you do.
Now I do not know in that state how many have to vote for the death penalty. I know that in Florida we even changed the law here, because used to you had to have a unanimous. Or at one time it was just the majority would say they wanted the death penalty, and then they changed it to it had to be unanimous to want the death penalty, and then they changed it back again. So I don't know. I guess we ought to look this up and tell our audience about it. But how many people in the jury have to say they want the death penalty? But in order for them to be guilty, it has to be unanimous. But I don't know how many it'll take for the death penalty.
Well, we have less than a minute to go. Do you have any final words summarizing things up, or anything you want to share with our listening audience?
Yeah, I just want to thank the people, man. Our YouTube channel is blowing up.
It is.
And we appreciate it. And I want to encourage people to get the word out and become a part of the family. You and I are already talking about we're going to set this thing up to where we're going to be doing a live show on Tuesday nights.
That's right.
And we want to have the audience engage with us.
That's right.
So I hope they'll get used to our 7:30 time when we're trying to go set this up, and that we'll be able to bring the family around the campfire, you might say, and be able to talk together about true crime. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.